I was sitting at my eldest son's soccer practice a few months ago, hoping my younger kids wouldn't notice me long enough to drag me off the bench. Not because I didn't want to play with them, but because I had a few minutes left in my podcast episode and I was just this close to finishing it. The episode from Theology Nerd Throwdown had taken a turn into discussing Jesus' advice on prayer and going into the inner room. The hosts were talking about Matthew 6:6. Jesus is telling his disciples to go into their inner room to pray. It's not exactly a metaphor, or at least it's not only a metaphor. He's talking about going actually into an inner space, or if we're looking at it metaphorically, an interior space, a place inside yourself where you close the door and meet God without an audience. And then they said something that inspired this whole series. The algorithm has picked the lock into that interior room. Hello, my name is Jacob Pinnell, and this is Faithful Fatherhood. So there I was, earbuds in, eyes down, using technology to learn how to be less distracted by technology, while my kids ran circles around me a few feet away. I had been musing already about how to use AI to free up mental space so I could be more present with my family and God by spending less time grinding away on my writing and other work. And that's when the irony hit me. I was already missing it. So I pulled out the earbuds, looked at my kids, and started chasing them across the field until we got exhausted with giggles. Here's what I really realized. I had let the algorithm into my interior room. It had taken the place of deeper, more present forms of living. I was doing a good thing, but I had missed the best thing of spending a few more moments enjoying my children. But I wasn't going to be able to crack this code by myself. I was going to need a guide. And that's where my mind immediately jumped to the 16th century Saint Teresa of Avila. Saint Teresa of Avila was born in about 1515. She spent her entire life watching the world come apart at the seams. The Protestant Reformation was fracturing the church. The Spanish conquest was remaking the known world. The printing press was doing to literacy what the internet is doing to us right now, flooding the culture with more information than any single person could process. It was not so different a picture of what we're going through today. She lived through it all. And what she did in response was not to try and consume more to speed up her life. She went inward and mapped the interior of the soul. Now, St. Teresa was a Carmelite nun. That's an order distinguished not by charitable works like maybe the more famous to us in the modern sense, Mother Teresa, but by contemplative prayer. Where others managed chaos from the outside, Teresa was mapping her interior. Her masterwork was the interior castle, or las moradas, or the mansions. That book imagines the soul as a castle with 7 rooms or 7 levels, each deeper and more luminous than the last, and each requiring you to leave something behind to enter. One of the great things about her was that she became the first ever woman named a doctor of the church. Doctors of the church are recognized as some of the most formative or authoritative thinkers or saints on a particular subject. St. Teresa's subject, prayer. I don't even think that you have to be a Christian to understand how integral prayer is to the religious life of a Christian. And she's the church's guide on that subject, the guide to building an interior prayer life. Here's why that matters to me and you right now in 2026, trying to be decent fathers in a world that won't stop accelerating. Teresa survived upheaval not by escaping it or by accelerating fast enough. She went deeper than that world could reach She closed the door. She actually did the work of going to the interior room, which Jesus had suggested to her over 1,500 years earlier. I think that's the posture we need right now. Not more productivity, not better AI prompts, not better, faster processes, depth. This is one of the first truly successful, widespread colonizations of human interiority. The input in this moment is user attention and human desire. The processor is the algorithm. It extracts data and monitors behavior. And the output is validation and sameness. That's a muted internal orientation that only justifies existing prejudices. It amplifies the things that get us amped up. It's looking for an emotional response. And the easiest emotional response out of so many men is anger. So it's no wonder that we feel so angry. And it's no wonder that we feel so lonely. The key insight is resistance is futile until you reclaim the space where this transaction, where this processing happens. That's something that translates into almost every faith we have. Look at how you're processing all of the inputs. Do you have an interior room, an interior life to think a little bit deeper? So, taking back that interior life requires us being mindful about the limits of AI. So, I use AI to help me organize my thoughts. And I want to be honest about what it's actually good for, because the honest answer actually has limits. If we use a construction metaphor, AI is an extraordinary scaffold. Now, having worked in construction, I've watched crews erect tower scaffolding around a building in a single afternoon. It's fast and it's quite impressive, actually, and it will bear some load in its own way. But it's not meant to be permanent. It's not meant to be there the whole time, to carry you through the rough times. The scaffold is not the building, or in St. Teresa's case, it's not the castle. It helps shape the exterior, but it doesn't determine what the inside means. This is where our three realms of faithful fatherhood come into play. And so we need to pay attention to what's going on. If you'll remember, the first realm, the one that I most often encounter with dads, is work. And work is what we kind of all do, it's what we all kind of produce going forward. And it helps us build the exterior of our building. And AI is really great at accelerating the exterior. Now, one of the interesting things about AI is not that we're not working less on the exterior, but we're actually working more on the exterior. Harvard Business Review just detailed a report about how workers mandated or encouraged to use AI actually spent more hours at work. So they were not only increasing their productivity within the hours that they had to work, but they were actually choosing to work more hours. So we have to be really careful about how AI interacts with our work. The second part of being a faithful fatherhood is family. This one seems obvious, but if we're looking at it through the construction metaphor again, the family is what colors the inside of our walls and it decorates our home with functionality. Do we have an old beat up couch because we have toddlers who are definitely going to jump on it or throw up on it or do whatever toddlers do to couch? Or do we have something really nice because your kids have gotten older and are able to hold on to it? Your family is going to dictate how your house is decorated. Right now, we have flowers all over our walls because my daughter loves painting flowers and then she likes taping them to our walls. It's kind of annoying at first, but in its own way, it brings a unique measure of beauty to our house. And that's something that my wife and I get to enjoy right now as she paints over and over and over again. The last one after work and family is faith. Faith brings real meaning to what's inside. It's the mood and the texture of what it means to be in your family. So you've got to make sure that you're at least contemplating. So you've got to make sure that you're at least contemplating or remembering or reminding your family of what the faith that you're centering yourself around is, because that's the human texture of your home. Now, for those of you off put by the word of faith, I don't mean something necessarily specific. It doesn't have to mean Christianity. That's what it means for me, but it doesn't have to mean that for you. So, if you'll remember, I have a very simple formula for faith. It is belief plus action equals faith. So here's the example. I believe church is good for my family. The action I take is I drive them there on Sunday. The faith is those two put together. I have the belief that church is good for my family, so I drive them there on Sunday. So it's both things put together is kind of what a faith is. And that's a really short, easy example. Obviously, there's more complex answers, but a real faith drives you to ask what actions you should take based on your beliefs. So it should cause you to examine the interior of your life. So let's bring this back into your family, because here's the thing St. Teresa wants you to know before you go any further. You don't have to build the castle. It already exists. It's the soul you were given. The question isn't how to construct it. The question is whether you've ever explored it. Have you walked the hallways? Do you know where the rooms are? Have you noticed how far back and how deep your own soul goes? Most of us find ourselves living in the foyer. That isn't a failure. It's just where most people are. St. Teresa calls this the first mansion or the first level. There's no shame there. The shame would be never going further. Let me give you an example for a few weeks from now, because in the third mansion, I really noticed how St. Teresa was actually addressing something that seems very common to me and the men around me, and that is the desert or the dry patch. This is where you are doing everything right, but feeling nothing. The mansion 3 is often marked by mastery without progress into depth. So maybe this is right where you find yourself. And that'll be a perfect week for you to join us to advance into the 4th, 5th, 6th, and 7th mansion. You've practiced discipline, but you don't have the depth. Or maybe in your faith, you're experiencing a dry patch or a desert. This is right where the third mansion is. So you don't even have to go that far into her work, the interior castle, to really begin to get something out of it. Again, though, this is not a failure. It means you've reached the boundary of the surface. You just have to keep walking. You just have to keep exploring your own soul. So here's where I'm starting. A podcast that convicted me on a soccer sideline. Kids who deserve a dad whose inner room has more than a couch and maybe a notification feed in it. A writing practice that keeps pulling me towards the surface when I know the real work happens deep down. And a suspicion, perhaps a conviction, that the men who are going to father well in this particular moment of history are not going to be the ones who figured it out, the best AI workflow or the best optimization. They're going to be the ones who learned to close the door and build an interior life worth living. St. Teresa guides us into how to explore and build our interior life. We start next week with mansions 1 and 2, what it means to enter the castle even at all. So if you're brand new to this, if this is a completely foreign idea on you, great. We're starting at level 1. You're going to join all the rest of us, and you're going to get to the chance to walk into a deeper life right along one of the masters of church history. She's also going to help us discern what keeps us standing in level 1 or 2. So to get you primed for that, I want to ask you one quick question. What's occupying your inner room right now? Is it the algorithm? Because the algorithm has picked the lock to my inner room, and I'm trying to shove it out. to make more space for a deeper, well thought out interior life so that I can bring my kids faithful fatherhood. I genuinely like to know what's occupying your inner room right now. Please drop it in the comments underneath this video or head to my Substack. Hello, my name is Jacob Pinnell, and this is Faithful Fatherhood.